It is time to speak my truth, to open the eyes of the masses, and to speak out against the injustice that's happening in anime. Too many of you people, you heathens and brain-rotted buffoons, are all too willing to sacrifice good storytelling and character development on the altar of shallow relationship progress. That's right! We're talking about romance anime today. Probably not quite the impassioned speech that I could have gone off on, but this is a bit of an opinion piece. The opinion is that I think romance should focus on character development and storytelling rather than just making progress. I don't actually think you're heathens or buffoons, by the way, I'm just goofing. I love you all, and I appreciate the support you've given the channel lately. Now, this might be something people don't like to hear, especially with what most of y'all will refer to as blue balling, with no significant progress in the relationship by the end of 12 episodes or a few seasons. But I'm saying that this point of view is wrong, an actual betrayal of the real shining gem of the genre. And this is, again, entirely my opinion on the matter, my writing philosophy on this subject, if you will. You are 100% allowed to differ from me if you don't like what I have to say. I'm not so high and mighty to sit here and act like my way is the only way, okay? If you know me, well, you should get to know me a bit. I like complex, nuanced characters, detailed and deep stories, and a nice pair of tits. That last part isn't actually very important here, but like I said, you should get to know me. The point is that I think that good character writing and storytelling are the real heart of fiction, especially romance. Why should I care about couple A when I only know the happy mask they put on? What happens to them when they inevitably struggle in life? What happens when they inevitably fight with each other? How do they handle conflict and tribulation? What makes them tick? What's there to love? Why do they have this relationship in the first place? These are all questions I tend to like answered. Romance means so much more to me when I understand the characters. It's so much more potent and valuable when you've seen people at their best and at their worst, not just the happy medium that would be ideal for everyone. Because, in the end, just about every romance is the same. So what sets them apart is how well their characters are written. And that's why I think our attention should be more on character development rather than progress, whatever that's supposed to mean. Because romance is ultimately the story of two people falling in love. This has been prompted by some of the romance anime that we've gotten this season. And the trifecta seems to be Makeine, Alia-san, and Pseudo Harem. I've seen some people, and if that's more to your taste, more power to you, but it's not to my taste, and hence why I'm making this video, that have talked about how Pseudo Harem was going to smoke other romance anime this season because it would have, quote, so much more progress. Now, Pseudo Harem is good in its own right. If you like the sort of sugary sweet diabetic romance, then this will be the right thing for you. But in all honesty, I found it lacking in the depth department. Characters were pretty flat. You only ever really seemed to see the happy, fluffy side of characters, and there was never any added meat to the bone of that story. But again, the point of Pseudo Harem is that fluffy, happy, easy to consume sort of story, so it's not an inherent fault of the show. It comes down to my tastes. And if you want to enjoy that sort of idealized, stress-free kind of story, by all means, don't let me stop you. But sure, by episode 7, the two in question have already gotten together. And if I'm entirely honest, it didn't do much for me. In fact, by that point, it almost felt like I was watching the same episode over and over again, as all they did was just flirt with each other. It felt like I was only getting the outward face of both of them, and not seeing any serious sort of relationship writing. Meanwhile, no significant events or life stories unfolded outside of their constant flirting with each other. Ultimately, there's never any serious struggle or negative aspect of the characters shown other than Rin Nanakura is a little bit lazy at home. So by the time the two actually entered a relationship in episode 7, I felt nothing for them other than a small amount of superficial happiness, because I will admit, it is cute. But I overall felt robbed of some sort of deeper character writing or something that I could truly connect with. Meanwhile, Makeine, which is what I'll go with for now because it's easily the best anime of the season, has no serious amount of relationship development between the main character, Nukumizu, and the ultimate blue-haired airhead, Anna. And yet, I still find it strikingly better because you actually get a lot of character work that makes me totally invested in what's happening. There are some secondary romantic things that are happening, but it's not happening with the main cast. In fact, most of the main cast are getting shot down, and it's just kind of become the story of a dumped girl support group with no major romantic tensions forming. In the same span of time as Pseudo Harem, you've seen ups and downs, good and bad, of many of the characters. You've seen them have their own struggles, their quirks, and their strengths. They aren't shallow, and it makes it that much more satisfying when they win, and that much more painful when they don't. The point is that progress doesn't make a banger romance anime, in my opinion. Character development, character exploration, and storytelling do. Making progress the goal without considering character development or storytelling leads to a shallow story and a shallow romance. On the flip side, to give a bit of acknowledgement to the opposing view, not making any progress at all over an extended period of time means you end up with trash like Rent-A-Girlfriend. My preference for character development and exploration in romance is why I don't mind stories like Komi-san Can't Communicate running for far too long as much as other people do. So long as I continue to get a good story and reasonable development of characters, as in there are still plot points to cover and you aren't just needlessly dragging things on, I will hold my complaints. But that doesn't mean I want no progress whatsoever in favor of all character development. There's a happy middle ground to be found in this that marks where good romance actually happens. If I spend 200 chapters worth of my time reading a romance just to get hand-holding scenes at the very end, I get why people would be upset with that, okay? It's very disappointing and has very little payoff. But for the sake of argument, to put something like Pseudo Harem over something like Makeine or Alia-san feels wrong to me because the stories of the latter two feel so much deeper and compelling. The ideal for romance is striking a balance between progression and character development that works. Love is War can drag things on for 3 seasons because it's established on the premise that both characters are far too stubborn to make the first move. That on top of the brilliant writing and excellent comedy of Aka Akasaka makes it acceptable to do so in my opinion. Plus, we get lots of moments that deepen the relationship between the two main characters, so it's all around very well paced and very well written. In a different example, Horimiya has only 12 episodes and ends with the main couple basically getting engaged after dating for like half the series. Not to say that this is bad pacing either, but it effectively covers everything you would need to know about the characters to a point where the end is satisfying in far less time. I think it's almost just as good as Love is War, and yet it's much shorter of an anime that still manages to give us a good bit of character exploration that endears us to the characters. The Dangers in My Heart is another good romance that has both progress and character exploration, which is satisfactory enough to make it worth watching. And as long as we're talking about the length argument, it's worth mentioning Tomo-chan is a girl being only 1 season long and summarily doing a decent job of wrapping up both ends of this argument of progress versus character development, even if I think the anime was largely forgettable myself. That's a different topic altogether. The issues with the progress over all mentality is stuff like Tonikawa, where the couple is married within the first 2 episodes. It's cute, and I do like the series, but there's really nothing exceedingly special about the anime other than that. And I mean, outside of the not-so-subtle hints at Tsukasa's immortality. By getting to the punch right out the gate, you've pretty much robbed the story of an impactful moment. The point of progress is that you're progressing towards something, i.e. you are developing towards a particular outcome, and the build up to that moment should help make it really meaningful and impactful. Tonikawa feels particularly empty to me because it focuses heavily on the happy, sweet life of a newlywed couple. As much as I enjoy the show for its antics and it's a good relaxer at the end of the day, it doesn't even clear B-tier romance for me. This idea that because a couple hasn't gotten together in a story by the end of the first season, it is therefore blueballing and taking far too long, I find to be ridiculous. It's almost like people have no patience for character work or storytelling and just want something big to happen and give them a shot of dopamine like that's the significant part of the story. Like I said earlier, the major distinguishing factor between romances is the character dynamics and writing. It's the most important one that will really determine how the show is received. The entire genre of romance hinges on the formation of relationships. Therefore, progress is bound to happen eventually, and it will all reach somewhat the same point. The reason to care is because you like the characters. not the actual happenings of the plot. Other things like setting and story are secondary, but still are worth noting in this discussion. Love is War is a very satisfying one to me because we get to explore Shinomiya and Shirogane through the comedy routines we get that truly shows us why we should love this pair of idiots. It makes their subsequent kiss at the end of season 3 that much more impactful, because by that point we are really rooting for the characters. We know who they are and why they deserve to be happy, and it's not just an event. And even the finale of The First Kiss That Never Ends is only really so exceedingly great in my opinion because of everything that came before it and made it all happen. And to sacrifice all that just to have a story that ends in a shallow relationship between characters who have no depth or intrigue seems like a total waste. Blitzkrieging your story isn't really recommended. If you really can't enjoy a romance anime because, quote, nothing happened, then I have to ask, how the fuck did you graduate from school when you're clearly illiterate? Okay, that one was a little bit far, I'm only kidding. Some things are just a matter of taste. Just like this. If you enjoy fast-paced romance where tons of stuff happens to surface-level characters, we'll just have to accept that we don't see it the same way and leave it at that. But when we think of romance, I will argue that the ones that readily come to mind, the top of the genre if you will, are the ones that show us all faces of the characters, that give us an actual story of people rather than we got along so we decided to date kind of stuff that is ultimately just the story of an event. This doesn't mean you have to wait until the end of the story to put them together. One of my favorite romance manga is titled Sweat and Soap, and it puts the main couple together very quickly. But we actually get to see the characters work through their insecurities, hardships, and relationship troubles together, and that really helps us get to know how these two interact and how they both support each other when one hits a low point in life. Plus, it ends with their marriage and even having a child together. Another point I will concede that sometimes romance ends too quickly on the progress chart, and it doesn't give enough payoff for all the work put into watching it. Still, I stand by my point. Rich characters make romance really pop, and are more important than whatever progress is expected. So I don't mind the usual romance schedule of anime taking 3 seasons to get up to the relationship. I find it more enjoyable when I get developed characters that I can like, especially when I know them through and through. Finally reaching the point of their relationship where they can admit their feelings to each other. Speed running a story just to say, look, they actually made progress, feels like a waste to me. It's the equivalent of all battle anime fans commenting on my Mushoku Tensei videos about how nuanced character development doesn't matter compared to cool shit or how they only watch anime for the fights. I feel like you're missing a lot of the point and the most impactful parts of the story, but if that's really what you want, fine, go for it. If you just want to see two people get together, then I argue you aren't actually really interested in romance stories, you're just interested in the cliff notes. So again, why should I care about a romance between two characters I never really gave a crap about because they were never developed? Why bother with a relationship that shows no depth other than two people flirting and not actually providing how compatible they are by supporting each other at their lowest moments and toughest times? So yeah, there's my hot take. I would rather get good characters and a boatload of development than mid characters and a boatload of progress. I don't care if it's long. I think good stories are worth it. But hey, if you like the video, you might as well check out some of my other videos. Thanks for watching.